The Idaho 4 case seems to be America's forever case. And I would like to dedicate this stream to exposing the ugly truth about what the Idaho 4 has turned into.
Turn on your mind now, tune into the feed. We're planting digital flowers from a single tiny seed. Yeah, power to the collective in the data and the soul. The hive mind's getting louder, finding a voice in control.
If this is your first time in the hive mind, let me tell you a little bit about it. This is a contrarian thinking live stream where we are not afraid to think past the headlines. So if you are easily rattled or offended on behalf of others, this is probably not going to be the stream for you. However, if you like to look into things and figure out what the narrative might be hiding, and you can easily detect what the mainstream media is trying to push to further some sort of agenda, then you have found your people, and welcome to the hive. Sometimes it gets a little bit heated in here, and as long as you're not trolling or threatening, it's okay to disagree. We pretty much let the chat do whatever they want. We got great mods, but I think it's important for conversation to be had in regards to what does everybody think, because you could think it might be not the truth, but there's still an endless list of possibilities of what happened. If you disagree with the mainstream narrative, there's like 90 other things it could have been. So I think we're going to get into it. Let me just give a quick plug for the channel. If you are not in our Discord, please go and click subscribe on my YouTube channel. Then you're going to see the more links button. Press that, scroll all the way down. Join the Hive Mind Discord, which is the 24/7 off-stream headquarters for the Hive. That's where I pull all of the YouTube questions of the day and the Hive Mind finds. I also have a website, birdiebombshell.com. I'm wearing the MSNPC t-shirts. We got pink tinfoil hats, and we have some embroidered hoodies. So that's where you can get those. We do ship internationally. I'm going to move on to the Hive Mind finds quickly because there's one that I just want to recycle through. So this is an old Hive Mind find, and today's going to be in more of an open discussion with the chat, as Saturdays typically are. And this was submitted by Kat. This was from August 26th. Okay, so a few weeks ago. But Kat had said, Birdie, this makes more sense than the BS they are feeding us. We have said this all along. Obviously, I don't know how true it is, but this is believable. And they had a screenshot of an email that had Brian Koberger's name with employee info on it. Now, I will say, in this justice for Brian Koberger, if you've been in the Hive, we discussed, like, anytime somebody on a public forum says, I've been sworn to secrecy and not naming my source, I think we all could take that with a grain of salt. However, what is the context of the information below it? And I have gone into at lengths in Substack articles about this phantom witness that seems to show up in every headline that's mainstream media. In an unnamed source or someone close to the investigation, they never name it. It's like, who is that? Who is it? So, I've been sworn to secrecy and not naming my source, which I never will, but let's just say this person's very well connected to this case. During our long conversation, they told me they'd spoken in detail to a U.S. federal agent, confidentially, of course, who confirmed something that I've always suspected and claimed, that Brian C. Koberger was, in fact, employed by Pullman Police Department, but not in the assistantship role that he originally applied for, in a different capacity altogether. Apparently, Brian was covertly employed in the role of a confidential informant and was working on a range of undercover projects for them at the time of the crimes. What those projects entailed, I really couldn't tell you, but there's one thing I can for an almost certainty. Playing the King Road Patsy was his very last role until he gets his new identity in WITSEC. Checkmate, Guilders. See, if that person, it's odd because it's a little bit of a dichotomy. Starting that bit of information where 3 days ago I was given some exclusive information with kind of a corny emoji of like, shh, and then saying you're sworn to secrecy, you're never going to name your source. As weird as that is, because when that person was typing it, they probably thought, oh, this is legitimizing this. Not for people like me, probably not for people like you. If anything, your like spidey senses are like, oh God, are they doing this just to give this credibility because it's actually going to be spoon feeding us a bunch of BS. However, this part right here, the Brian C. Koberger was in fact employed by Pullman Police Department, but not in the assistantship role that he originally applied for. And he was working for them in a different capacity altogether, being a confidential informant. What's odd is that a lot of people have thought that prior to ever talking to some, secret source. So I'm curious right now. Let's get this kicked off. Hive, what are your thoughts on if Brian? Do we all agree? Let's just back into this. Do we all agree that it is a fact Brian Koberger applied for an internship at Pullman PD? Yes or no? Or one or two? Yes is one. No is two. That is what we are going to deem a fact for this conversation. We all agreed that Brian was a very good criminology student. Is there a chance that Brian Koberger was a confidential informant? That would be the next question that I have for everybody. And they said either this internship is below you, you're overqualified for it, and we believe that with you not knowing many people here, being a new person, it might actually help you be, quote, undercover. And being a low-level informant, I don't even think that's like that. I don't think that would be that hard to do. A low-level informant is just submerging yourself amongst the college body, like the population, the student body, and just probably reporting back what you're seeing. Now there are rumors that maybe Brian did piss some people off in the Pullman PD. Guys, I don't know what to think of the social comments made about Brian. Because we have Will, take it for what it is, but Will said that Brian was extremely quiet but very nice when they were one-on-one. Yet the news has pushed this narrative that he was apparently just extremely mean to only, and I'm talking about Ashley Banfield now, saying that, well, he was late for the female professors and he was only mean to the female students, but for males, yada, yada, yada. Okay. I believe that is a narrative. I don't know how you can say that because some people were mad that he maybe graded them harder, or the professor that had said he didn't like Brian because they'd be ready to go home and Brian would show up to their office hours wanting to stay and talk. So they were annoyed. I don't think that says much about and I think to Jane's point, everyone seems to have had an effing problem with Brian Koberger there. That is wild to me because it's not like it's that small of a school where when you're that new still, you can be hated by everybody if you're just some quiet loner. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't seem like you can have both. Now, I have the title America's Forever Case and the Ugly Truth because I think we're getting to a point that this case was designed to never be solved. That might piss people off. But that's the theory that we're going to talk about here right now. So shift into that mindset. There's no way that with how the first 48 hours went in this case, they weren't anything close to what you would see. The cop showing up on scene, not locking down the crime scene, the delay for the 911 call. We have to get out of, because even ourselves, and myself at least, when I first saw this, I'm like, holy shit, dude, that what? And then when I saw Brian, I'm like, that's the dude that did it. And then you start seeing everything else add up, and I'm like, okay, well, this case has gotten constant media attention. Like, what is it? Is there an ugly truth behind this case? And then you think about what has been riding on the coattails of the Idaho 4 case. So I have some notes, and it's like we have the shock. It's like shock and awe, right? So in pretty much November through December, even early January, we see the national media have wall-to-wall coverage. Now, do not forget, this case in the news, there were fears of it going cold. Do you guys remember the headlines? There were fears of this case being a cold case. And I think, even if I could pull one up right now, the other thing that's really weird when you search this is, have you guys ever been searching on, the Idaho 4? There's like nothing left on the internet. Like, let me show you guys this. Okay. I type in fear of Idaho 4 case going cold 2022. That's 2025. It's a month ago. 2025. Okay. We have 2022, 2023, 2023. No more results. Does anybody else see that when they search that shit? Because they're slowly scrubbing everything off there. If you guys haven't noticed, I have daily searched. There are less and less results from the news about this case in the beginning. It's hard to find anything. So unless that shit was saved, they're scrubbing it. Now, how is there not even see more results that might not be the same? Even if I just type in Idaho 4 case 2022, let's see how many. Okay, month ago, 2025, 1 month ago, 1 month ago, 1 month ago, 2025. Let's go to page 8. Oh, nope. Page 7, 2024, 2023, 2023. Okay, here's 2022. So I guess it's just 2025. There's really only I would guess there's like less than 10 articles about 2022 when you type that in, because there was just only 3 that we just saw there. Everything here is 2025. 2025. Is the ugly truth of the Idaho 4 case that this is going to be the flagship case for IGG no longer being in question when it comes to evidence? Is that what this is about? Is it a stretch? Because you have to think to yourself, well, the United States government probably wouldn't let that happen. The FBI had guidelines against it. Do you understand that the court systems are so backed up with 90 to 95% of cases never going to trial? IGG will force plea deals, everybody. That's what it'll do. It's going to force plea deals. And the more that I look at this case, the more that I watch other creators talk about documents, the more that I see people still diving into the grub truck and all the oddities, I'm like, this looks designed to not have an answer. I do not understand how we can have a shitload of footage, social media posts, all of these police documents. And while there's a lot of people that say Pavarotti is close with Mowich, and I don't disagree. I think that I do think that is probably in my head, if we were going to look at this as a legitimate case, that's the only person that I've heard name a guy. I think that's how you say the name, Mowich. That's the only one that I can think of. But why not come out and say that? Why not come out and say that? And why ride it out to Brian Koberger? That is the ugly truth that I'm talking about. Either because they knew this was a giant gang hit with something going on, and the guy that did this is already dead. So if they knew this dude was dead soon after, and they don't want to say how he died because the Aryan Knights shut him up, well, what are you going to do? You're going to hijack that narrative, because I'd be curious if, and I don't know the rules on this, but where my brain, I'm really trying to think in this for a different, in a different light right now. Okay. I'm really trying to think of this in a different light than I have been for a while. If they knew it was Mowich, because these are not dumb people investigating. They might play dumb. They're not stupid. These are very smart people. And I think sometimes we just think they're dumb. I think they're playing dumb. And if they knew it was Mowich, can you investigate a dead person and that DNA with IgG with no guidelines being broken? Why not? Right? So if they knew that, is there a chance that there's an opportunity to pin this on Brian Koberger to give public closure that would therefore allow the IgG to become front and center and have the public nod along and clap, saying, yes, good job? Because if you were the FBI, would you want IgG at your fingertips? I would. Full transparency, I would. I don't know if I'd, because ultimately the FBI, we just identify this person. Then it's on the courts. We can just do this. Right? We can just do that. And the chat is updating again on my end. Nice. Jeremy, thank you for the super chat. And William Tardy, thank you so much as well. Jeremy said, would you compare Optum Labs to Purdue Pharma paid off? I don't know. I don't know. Because I'm starting to think that what happened is that the truth of the case, guys, if Pavarotti is right, and Mowich was the killer and he died after due to very suspect circumstances, to the point where somebody at the hospital had called and reported a tip in regards to the Idaho 4 because of how weird the injuries were and the story was. And then you got Farley, who seems to potentially saying some shit about Mowich or the accident and the feet being broken and all that shit. What if that's it? What if the Idaho 4 killer was dead? What if it was? Would America accept that? Well, and Stone saying, explain all the media covering up for the killer. That's kind of the part that I wanted to open up to the Hive, because in my head, I'm trying to put it in the light of, did the FBI then take this opportunity? Okay. See, I had made a TikTok about this and a reel about it, or a short, whatever the hell it's called. I can never remember it. If the FBI had suspicions that Moscow PD was corrupt, and they weren't going to investigate this case, as they have not investigated other suspicious deaths on campus in the past, is it a stretch that the FBI would see, is Moscow PD going to do the right thing? They're going to come clean about Mowich? Are they going to come clean that they knew that it wasn't suspect vehicle 1? And it was really, an undercover cop car? To me, that's not crazy mental gymnastics. I don't know what you guys think, why they would cover it up, but you're looking at companies like Palantir, Gideon, and Othram that all have contracts with the DOJ and the DOD. If you were in those departments, you would want IgG. investigations will go much quicker, and then it goes into the court system. Right. Exactly. That's what K-Wolf, yes. And this is the biggest benefit of the chat. When I'm talking about this, I love when people summarize what I've been trying to say in 2 sentences. So great job, K-Wolf. Top dog comment. And I don't disagree. I think Pav has figured it out, but I don't think America would accept that the murderer is already dead. They want someone to punish. You can't punish a dead person. So if you were in law enforcement's shoes, whether or not the FBI ran this whole sting on Moscow PD, but let's just say a general overarching umbrella of law enforcement, and knowing that they wouldn't, meaning the public wouldn't accept the fact that the murder's already dead. Nobody can be punished. Somebody has to be held accountable. Who is it? Well, what could you do? You never let a good crisis go to waste, Hive. And you know what, Brandon, you're not wrong, but it's like they could have put it on Brent if that was the case. See, that's where I'm like, okay, if the killer was already dead, and then you have Brent Kopaka, who is, living in an apartment with nothing, and his phone is wiped, and there's only his discharge paper, and he's a PTSD veteran, and there's very suspect shit around that. I do wonder if Brent's role. I go back to the University of Idaho's website being down. The scheduled maintenance is extremely weird. All of their cameras go down during the window of this suspected crime. How does that happen unless it's completely premeditated? So if they were going to try to put it on Kopaka as a patsy, but then again, think about this. Let's say he was involved. Let's say it was Mowich and Kopaka. Farley running surveillance, Aryan Knights involved, drugs. If Koberger was the confidential informant, dude, you would have to put it on. You would have to put it on that on him as a patsy. You'd have to. Yes, exactly, Crown. And it was on the weekend. No way. Scheduled maintenance on a weekend? I don't think so. And work security at U of I. Like, again, these are very smart, opportunistic people is what I'm getting at, Hive. The whole point of this stream was to, again, go into the ugly truth. I no longer believe that this case is a mystery in terms of this was a quadruple homicide carried out by someone who they say is Brian Koberger that had no connections to the victim. They couldn't put him in the house. They don't remember if he had a burner phone. His timeline makes no sense. The body cam footage has an hour, 7 minutes, and 26-second delta on it. There's a shitload of redactions. There's camera footage missing from Linda Lane. The witness statements make zero sense. They're slow bleeding and releasing this, and it's causing confusion and contradictions. It's a mess. This was apparently an extremely quick crime where they knew what the murder weapon is, but they don't have a motive. They haven't found the murder weapon. And it never goes to trial. They're following Brian Koberger throughout prison, getting his prison complaint forms, reading them on the news. Ashley Banfield, you know what? We need to flip this narrative on Ashley Banfield. And I could tell you, Ashley, the pictures that she posted of Brian flexing and doing all that weird shit, I'm not going to go and say that every dude does that. Dude, every single person looks in the mirror, and I'm not saying that they're like flexing in the mirror, but also, you want to know what you did? You contradicted yourself. I could tell you right now, Brian Koberger, seeing those pictures, and this is not to be like mean, Brian Koberger dude, he's a soft body. That dude would not be able to go in there and do that timeline. So if anything, now you got these pictures with his shirt off. He's got his jeans on. He's showing off, the back, trying to see if it comes over his jeans. Come on, dude. That's the guy. That's the guy that went in and did this Jason Bourne timeline and escaped with no cuts. Give me a break. Give me a break, dude. Use your head. You would need to be physically superior to pull this off. And she doesn't understand that. Instead, she's trying to like shame him and body shame him. Could you imagine? And I'm not even trying to go like male versus female in this, but I'm just saying there's been such a pass on Brian Koberger and the roommates based on their sex. I truly think that. And you guys could disagree, but if those roommates were men, they would have been detained. I truly wholeheartedly believe that. At least like an 80% chance they're getting detained that day. Not questioned, like they're going to be put in cuffs. There is no way that if a woman did this, a male anchor could go and expose the selfies of her trying on clothes and seeing if they had a muffin top putting on jeans. Are you shitting me? There's no way. And it's not even to defend that. I know there's a different set of I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Different set of I don't know. There's just like a different set of social acceptances on that. I get that. But what Ashley didn't understand that she did, dude, you just showed the world like this dude is not strong enough to probably do that with how many stabbings. Yeah, standards. Thank you, guys. Okay. Brian Koberger would get folded like a lawn chair by a lot of people. I could tell you that. Brian Koberger was a runner. And I'm sorry, he's not a fighter. Doesn't have the killer instinct. He wasn't obsessed with serial killers. He wasn't looking at things that any other criminology student wouldn't. So what is the ugly truth of this case? The ugly truth of this case is that they knew that the killer was probably already dead and the public wouldn't accept it. So how do they not let a good crisis go to waste? Insert Brian Koberger, frame him, prop up IGG. Then you take the parents who are playing a role in this because they've probably been told the truth, calling Brian a pedophile, saying that he snuck up on them in their sleep, all this shit. They're probably frustrated. They're probably out there being told all this shit. Dude, I'm telling you, Stacey Chapin becoming the spokesperson for Othram was the giveaway. It was a giveaway. Because now Othram and IGG, the exact sketchiest aspect of convicting Brian Koberger, if you question Othram and you question their process, you are now questioning grief. You're victim shaming. And it's a genius playbook on Othram's part. It's a PR strategy rollout at CrimeCon. And then for anybody to say, oh, you can't make money off of crime, you shouldn't grift, and you shouldn't make money off murder, you're going to tell me there's a convention for murder cases called CrimeCon. And Othram Labs just so happens to now put the cherry on top with Stacey Chapin as their spokesperson. That is a PR rollout, my friends. And so there is no truth in the Idaho 4 case. That's the ugly truth. Brian Koberger is not the person that killed them. Brian Koberger is playing a role because the real killer or killers are dead. Being, if you believe Kopaka was shot and killed, yes. And then you got Mowich, which great work by Pavarotti. The public wouldn't accept that. Why do you think, guys, hold on. Let's line this up. What date did Mowich die? Okay, so let's piece this together now. And I don't know if Pavarotti's thought of this. The first press conference for Moscow PD, Idaho 4. What was the date of the first press conference? So November 15th, he goes to the hospital. Then he died from his injuries on November 19th. But then Caleb is, okay, so there's a range here, okay? But when was the first press conference date? This was November 16th. So if Mowich goes into the hospital on November 15th, everybody, we're wondering, why are they waiting 4 days to have a press conference? And then if Mowich went in on the 15th, and let's say he was dead or they already knew he wasn't going to make it critical condition, then you're going to tell me the following day is when they have their press conference and they say, we don't believe that there is any ongoing threat to the community, but you should keep your head on a swivel and that we believe this was a targeted approach and nobody's at risk. Give me a break, bro. They know it was Mowich. They knew it was him. And now they had to convict a public person and they were not going to let that go to waste. That explains the oddity and the dog shit first 48 hours of it by Moscow PD, because they knew it. They knew it, and they didn't want to have to tell the public that somebody was allegedly already dead because this case wouldn't be solved. It'd be terrible for the victims' family members. So instead, they schemed. They got all the families to play a role because they said, in the future, guys, we identified that it was Mowich using IgG. We currently can't do that without breaking our guidelines. So to help protect and get these people the next time this happens, because there's going to be another time that this happens, we are going to have to set a precedent. And you guys can use this to help your children's legacy moving forward to catch future killers. I think Pavarotti is correct in Mowich. Mowich goes to the hospital on the 15th. Moscow PD says that you're not at risk on the 16th. After 4 days of not talking, the investigation gets weird after that, Hive. I'm gonna riff off this. So Reality with Chris and Marie says, so you guys accept the lie to cover up our lie to help the greater good down the road when there wouldn't be able to be a case solved in real time without IgG. Theory time.
Please retrieve your nearest tinfoil hat. Place hat firmly on your head.
What if they were using Dylan? What if they were using the other girls to get to Dylan so that Dylan they would befriend her, knowing that her boyfriend would come over and probably share shit about the AK? Because if I was planning an operation, you obviously have to infiltrate at a certain level. What better way to infiltrate than the girlfriend of the son of the dude that's in the Aryan Knights? Because if I was planning an operation, who would have their guard up? You don't think that I'm talking about Dylan's boyfriend. You don't think that dude's dad hasn't told him to keep his head on a swivel? Son, you got to be cautious of people. Would he suspect his girlfriend's roommates? And BF got the hell out of Dodge to never return. Right. Well, correct. Yes, you're right. And one thing to keep in mind, I think when you theorize, people might disagree with this. This is a real-time theory. This is conversation amongst friends, right? I would consider us, quote, talking about this as if we were sitting around a bonfire just shooting the shit about it, but we're thinking out loud. So correct. I mean, we might get the technical names wrong, and yes, I get people might have a problem with that, but in real time when I'm reading these and I'm just saying it, yes, you are right, Brandon. There could be, yeah, correct. But we're still understanding the gist of it. I think a huge aspect of this is that look at what Pav did. Instead of disagreeing with Pavarotti and saying that guy's an idiot, which he's not, but I'm hypothetically saying this. Look at what Sherlock did with the Delta. He's like, I'm going to test his hypothesis. Well, Mowich going in the day before the press conference after everyone's wondering why the hell did it take 4 days, and then them saying this was a targeted approach. We don't think anybody's in danger. Come on. That's uniting. That is us fighting back against the mainstream media douchebags. These folks, the MSNPCs. With that, Hive, I hope you all have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Central. Cheers.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life.